Clay was a 32-year-old man leading a quiet life in sunny California. He worked as a computer engineer in a large company, spending his days immersed in code and technology. In his free time, he enjoyed long walks in the California hills, loved reading science fiction books, and in the evenings relaxed in front of the TV with a good movie or TV series. He was a creature of habit, with a well-established routine that brought him comfort. One evening, like many others, Clay settled on the couch after dinner, ready to enjoy a psychological thriller. The house was quiet, enveloped in darkness except for the dim light of the television illuminating his face. The screen displayed scenes of increasing tension as Clay completely immersed himself in the story, unaware of what was about to happen. Suddenly, a metallic noise came from the kitchen. Clay tensed, his heart pounding. He got up from the couch, cautiously crossing the dark hallway. The noise had stopped, leaving only a deafening silence. Entering the kitchen, Clay turned on the light. Everything was in its place, no signs of intrusion or disorder. Relieved but still shaken, he was about to return to the living room when he noticed a white piece of paper on the table. With a hint of fear, he picked it up. It was a blank white sheet. He flipped it over and examined it carefully, trying to see if there was something hidden, an invisible message or a watermark. But there was nothing. A shiver of terror ran down his spine. That blank sheet, appearing out of nowhere in a silent and empty house, was an unsettling mystery. Clay felt watched, as if an invisible presence was scrutinizing him from who knows where. He returned to the living room, but he couldn't focus on the movie anymore. His mind was obsessed with the blank sheet, with that mystery that had no rational explanations. He stared at the television, but the images no longer reached him. He only saw the blank sheet, imagining the silhouette of a hand placing it on the table, a hand that didn't belong to this world. The night passed sleeplessly, tormented by nightmares and visions of that unsettling blank sheet. In the morning, exhausted and vacant-eyed, Clay went to work like a robot. He couldn't confide in anyone about what had happened. He feared being thought of as crazy. The following days were a series of unsettling events. Objects moving on their own, lights turning on and off for no reason, faint whispers coming from empty rooms. Clay was now convinced he was haunted by a paranormal presence. He tried to find comfort in rationality, attempting to give scientific explanations to what was happening. But every attempt was futile. Reality merged with the nightmare, blurring the boundaries between what was real and what was imaginary. Isolated and terrified, Clay began to lose control of his life. Work, relationships, his passions, all took a back seat. The only thing that mattered was surviving this terrifying experience. In desperation, he turned to an old friend passionate about the paranormal. After listening to his story, the friend had no doubts. Clay was a victim of a poltergeist, a mischievous spirit tormenting his existence. Together, they began searching for a solution. They explored ancient libraries, consulted paranormal experts, and attempted purification rituals. But nothing seemed to work. The poltergeist was becoming increasingly aggressive, and the phenomena more intense. Clay was on the brink of despair. He had lost hope, and his life had become a living hell. But just as he was about to give up, one night he had an idea. He remembered his passion for science fiction, for those imaginary worlds where technology served humanity. What if technology could be the key to defeating the poltergeist? With the help of his tech-savvy friend, Clay designed a system of sensors and cameras capable of detecting the presence of the poltergeist. He transformed his house into a laboratory, monitoring every corner, every movement, every temperature variation. After weeks of relentless research, the breakthrough finally came. The sensors detected an energy anomaly in the attic. Clay and his friend climbed the stairs, trembling and armed with courage. The attic was dark and dusty, filled with old boxes and unused furniture. The air was heavy, charged with palpable electric energy. Clay activated the infrared cameras, scrutinizing the darkness for any movement. Suddenly, a semi-transparent figure appeared on the screen. It was a humanoid shape, twisted and trembling, moving restlessly. Clay recognized it immediately. It was the poltergeist. For the first time, he could see his adversary. It was a creature of pure energy, a tormented being that found no peace. Clay no longer felt fear, only a profound sense of sadness. With the help of his friend, Clay designed a device capable of emitting waves of specific frequencies. The idea was to create an inhospitable environment for the poltergeist, forcing it to leave his home. After a night of exhausting work, the device was ready. They turned it on and waited with trepidation. At first, nothing happened. Then, the figure on the screen began to writhe even more violently, as if undergoing an invisible torture. After a few minutes, the creature let out a haunting scream and disappeared into thin air. The house was quiet again. The nightmare had finally ended. Sheila, a 20-year-old with an insatiable curiosity for the world, divided her days between the University of Letters and part-time work at a neighborhood bookstore. Amidst ancient books and dusty tomes, her mind fed on fantastical stories, fueling her passion for the paranormal. Her evenings were often dedicated to documentaries on alleged ghost sightings and urban legends, shared with her cat Oscar, the sole witness to her screams of terror and nervous laughter. One evening, engrossed in reading a book about haunted houses, Sheila came across a story that struck her particularly. It told of an ancient mirror once owned by a fallen family, rumored to harbor the restless soul of a young woman. The mirror, now in a local museum, was known to induce hallucinations and terrifying nightmares in anyone who gazed into it for too long. Drawn to the mystery, Sheila decided to visit the museum the next day. The building, once an opulent residence, was now a silent and dusty place. Crossing the threshold, Sheila made her way through rooms filled with archaeological artifacts and faded paintings until she reached the Hall of Mirrors. There, in a glass case, was the cursed mirror. Its golden frame was cracked in some places, and the glass surface was slightly fogged. Sheila approached, observing her trembling reflection. Her green eyes shone with a mix of excitement and fear. She inspected the mirror from every angle, trying to catch details that didn't match her reflection. It was then that she noticed a strange dark spot, almost imperceptible, in the bottom right corner. The spot pulsed weakly, like a sick heart. Intrigued, Sheila approached even closer, pressing her face against the cold glass. In that moment, the spot enlarged, taking the form of a face. It was the face of a young woman, pale, with eyes wide open in terror. The lips moved silently, as if pleading for help. Sheila startled, terrified. She recoiled from the mirror, stumbling and falling to the ground. Her cat, Oscar, rushed towards her, meowing in concern. The girl got up with trembling legs, her gaze fixed on the mirror. The spot had disappeared as if it had never existed. But Sheila knew she had seen something real, something horrible. From that day on, her life changed. She began to have recurring nightmares where the young woman from the mirror pleaded for salvation. She saw her face everywhere, in store window reflections, in puddles of water, even in her teacups. Sheila felt haunted. Her rationality wavered in the face of evidence of a paranormal presence. The only one she could confide in was Oscar, who watched her with his yellow eyes as if understanding her torment. Determined to uncover the truth, the girl began to research the history of the family to which the mirror belonged. She delved into dusty archives and remote libraries, reconstructing the lives of its ancient owners. She discovered unspeakable secrets and forgotten tragedies, leading her to one terrifying conclusion. The young woman from the mirror had been murdered, and her soul was trapped in the cursed object. Sheila faced a dilemma. Should she free the tormented spirit or condemn herself to a life of terror? Her choice would have unpredictable consequences, not only for her, but also for the world of the living and the dead. The sun lazily set on the Florida coast, tinting the waves that lapped the golden beach with shades of pink. 4 friends, Inseparable since their school days, were gearing up for yet another summer trip. There was Liam, the group's leader, always ready for adventure. Jaden, the joker, with a quick wit. Clara, the romantic dreamer. And Ryan, the shy one of the group, with a passion for horror books. Every year, they chose a different destination, exploring the secrets of their state. This year, the adventure had led them to the Wolf's Retreat, a resort nestled in the wild nature, far from the city chaos. Upon arrival, the charm of the place completely enveloped them. An ancient Victorian-style villa, with towering turrets and stained glass windows, stood majestic in the center of the park. The friends settled into their rooms, furnished with antique furniture and unsettling portraits of ancestors with stern gazes. The crisp evening air invited them to explore the gardens. Among shaded paths and ancient trees, an atmosphere of unreal tranquility prevailed. An almost deafening silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Suddenly, a shiver of terror ran through them. A tall, slender figure dressed in white moved silently among the ruins of an old gazebo. The face was hidden by an ethereal veil, and its hands, as cold as death, twisted in spectral gestures. The friends, petrified by fear, dared not move. An anguish pervaded them, as if an invisible force held them prisoners in that cursed place. The figure approached slowly, its steps light as a whisper in the night. Jaden, the bravest of the group, tried to scream, but a knot of terror choked his voice. The figure stopped in front of them, its eyes empty like black pools staring into their souls. A heartbreaking moan escaped its lips, a sound that sent shivers down their spines. Then, suddenly, like a fleeting apparition, the figure dissolved into the mist, leaving behind only a ghostly silence. The shaken and horrified friends huddled together, seeking comfort in each other's company. That night, sleep eluded them. Their minds were tormented by that spectral apparition and the mystery that surrounded it. Who was that woman dressed in white, and what was her dark message? Dawn brought with it a faint hope. Perhaps it was just a nightmare, a macabre trick of their imagination. But one unsettling detail troubled them. A single white rose, dew-kissed, had been left right in front of their door. The Wolf's Retreat was no longer a holiday haven, but a castle of terror. The following days were marked by a series of unsettling events. Objects moving on their own, whispers in the darkness, fleeting shadows darting in the dark corners. The increasingly frightened friends tried to rationalize, but the feeling of being watched and haunted became overwhelming. Their vacation turned into a waking nightmare, a psychological thriller pushing them to the brink of madness. On the last night, they decided to escape. Fear had overwhelmed them. In a tense silence, they prepared to leave the Wolf's Retreat. But just as they crossed the threshold, a chilling voice stopped them. "You will never leave." The figure of the woman dressed in white was again before them, her cadaverous face illuminated by the moon. A scream of terror pierced the night as the friends were swallowed by the darkness.